Okay, today I am going to give a talk about the Buddhist perspective on death and dying. What are some practices we can do to help heal around death and dying, and also what's the understanding of Buddhists. So today I am off at the moment animal sitting, and I feel quite tired physically, and I've just been off to a funeral of a man who was an acquaintance of mine I've spoke about in a different video, who was a few years older than me, and just was talking to someone in the wake afterwards, and I was thinking, well, what is the Buddhist perspective on death and dying, and what are some of the practices of Buddhists? So one of the things which really woke up Prince Siddhartha, who eventually became the Buddha, was when he saw the three different things of old age, sickness and death, and then he saw the fourth thing was the samana, the holy person, the renunciate. And when he saw this, it says in the story he'd never seen death before, and it was really shocking to him that it had kind of been hidden from his father. He lived in a palace where no one got old, because everyone who got a certain age were kind of pushed to one side, and he really lived a really idyllic life, and he didn't have to deal with death. And reflecting, as I'm talking now, I see that is how the West is. It's that the West kind of hides ourselves from death. We don't really go there. It's like, we don't think about our own death. We don't really prepare for it. We don't think about these things, and we don't talk about them. It's like a taboo subject. Yet the Buddhist reflection is that, one day I will die. One day you will die. And it's really important to meditate on that every day. Regularly, whether it's every day, but regularly, just thinking, one day I will die. And it's not necessarily, the idea is not a macabre, I'm going to die one day. It's like, no, totally different. That if you look around, that's why it's wonderful being in nature compared with being in a city, is that you just see death and rebirth all the time. The leaves fall off the tree, the plants die, and then they're reborn. And you're kind of somehow anaesthetized from this, living in a city. Everything seems new and shiny, and it lasts forever, warranties or whatever. And it's like, it's a really important thing just to know that all of life decays and dies one day in order for it to be reborn. And I feel that I know it's a big cause of suffering in the West. And I was listening to a talk by Ajahn Brahm, one of the Thai forest monks. And he was just saying that, when he lived in Thailand, he would wander around and sleep in the charnel grounds, which were the burial grounds, essentially. And he said that he only ever saw one person in all the time he was in Thailand, I think it was about 9 years, crying at a funeral. For them, in their culture, it's so deeply imbued that death is a normal part of life, and also rebirth is, that that person's died and they're going to be reborn as Bob next door, as my granddaughter or whatever. It's just that understanding, because it's part of their culture. And I was reflecting on this. I was talking to someone about that today at the funeral, about the fact that in Christianity, that I was brought up with the fact that death was final. That was it. And yet, looking back into the ancient Gospels and the ancient text, you see that reincarnation, rebirth, are actually talked about. And I believe it was in the Nicaea, the treaty, the Council of Nicaea with Constantine, where they took those aspects that didn't really fit in with the religion, the thing they were formulating. So the aspects of reincarnation in those Gospels were taken out, and some whole books were taken out. And I feel it's a really... Well, death doesn't become like it's the end anymore. It's like it's over. And therefore, funerals are terrible places on one level, because it's like, oh my God, it's over, that's it. And the Buddhist perspective is that, well, no, it's not it. We're born again. Unless, of course, in the Buddhist, we achieve nirvana, enlightenment. And yet, there are very few of us who do achieve that. So, essentially, we're reborn again and again. So, I feel that's an important thing to just, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but there's many faiths which believe in this, about the idea of reincarnation, that everything is born and then it dies, and then it's born again and it dies. It's like you just look at nature and this is what is happening around us. Yeah, and the other thing about it, though, is that I feel in the West we have this thing about grief, is that it's stiff upper lip. We don't have this belief that there's reincarnation, but then we don't grieve either. It's like we're told, first few weeks, maybe your wife dies or whatever, you're allowed to grieve. And then society says, oh no, I can't handle that anymore. 2 weeks is up, that's enough. Stop grieving. And I feel we have held on to so much grief over the people who've died in our lives. And I come back to my own experience. When I was in my 20s, I ended up in a Buddhist monastery, and I hadn't grieved over the death of my father, of my friends, over people who were very close to me. And I really held on to this grief. And when I eventually gave myself the space to cry for everything which had happened, I spent nearly 2 years crying nearly every day. But once I let it go, once I then got this understanding, the Buddhist perspective, death is different. But until we've let go of the past, it's like this baggage we carry with us. As when we go to a funeral, when someone close to us dies, it's like, because there's all that baggage we've got inside us, we're frightened of crying because of what could come out. Like for me, 2 years of crying, every day. But what happens is when we actually grieve, we cry, we let go, all of that stuff, then what happens is when something challenging comes up, we cry, but that's it. We don't have this backlog. The idea I always saw with my emotions was like this dam. I had this dam of stuff, and it was a huge dam. Think of Hoover Dam, that was my emotions. And once I'd let it go over those few years, then when something challenging did happen, it was like, I cried, the river flowed, and then, and then it flowed normally. It might, like heavy rainfall. So, yeah, those are some of my... I have an animal here trying to get my attention. Yes, you can be stroked. So yeah, that's just a few of my own reflections, my personal experience, and also the Buddhist perspective on death and dying. The Buddhist perspective, it's not the end, death. that we carry on. Once we die, we're reborn. And it's like an energy stream just flowing. And what I love that, and carry on, is that it's about coming back and being present. Is that, yeah, I will die one day. And therefore, it's really important to be grateful and to really appreciate this moment. Come back and be present. Enjoy my husband, my wife, my children, my animals. It's like, yeah, be present and enjoy them, because one day they will go, and that's okay. Enjoy them now, feel them in your heart, and remember, this too will pass. So, yeah, just a few reflections, and yeah, much love, light, and blessings to you on this day. Okay, be well, be well.